We are live. Welcome to another episode. Um, the topic I wanted to discuss today is what do Russia, China, and Iran have in common? And not only these countries, but to a smaller extent, Turkey, India. There's this paradigm that is emerging from the Russians. Of course, they are trying to frame this new world order created around the BRICS and around the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They want to frame it in some sort of historiographic terms. They want to frame this new world order that they are creating as a type of new paradigm. So, just like in international relations, we had, after the Peace of Westphalia, after 1648, we had the idea of sovereignty, national sovereignty, the fact that every country has the prerogative to decide its own affairs within its own borders. Particularly in that case, it was about religion, whether or not the country should be Catholic or Protestant, and basically the kings and princes won the prerogative as a consequence of the Peace of Westphalia to determine their own religion, the religion of their subjects. Just like we've had the paradigm of multipolarity and then of bipolarity during the Cold War, and then the hegemony after the fall of the Soviet Union and of the communist regimes in Eastern Europe. Just like just like all the other eras have closed until now, the era of hegemony, the hegemonic dominance of the earth by the United States is coming to an end as well, and it is being replaced by a new paradigm. And this new paradigm, given the fact that it has at the forefront countries such as Russia, China, and Iran, the so-called axis of evil, according to the Western propaganda, they're trying to frame this in the paradigm of civilizational states. So, to some extent, it is a bit of going back to the world order that was before the First World War, when you had land empires. Of course, you also had maritime empires such as the British Empire, but Europe, in its position as a microcontinent, was dominated by some land empires, and the most important of which being the Habsburg Empire, being the German Empire, which lost some territory to some extent, even though the German Empire was closer to the idea of a nation state. But yeah, perhaps the archetypal example is the Habsburg Empire, which after 1867 became Austro-Hungary. And of course the Tsarist Empire, the Russian Empire, also disintegrated partially, even though Russia has always been a multinational state and it still is one today. But coming back to the idea of the civilizational states, all of these three countries, China, Russia, and Iran, are to a certain extent multinational states. They have been so because they are the descendants of empires. They are the descendants of unbeaten empires because, of course, Austria and Hungary are also the descendants of empires, but their minute state, their diminutive size, is a consequence of the fact that these empires have been beaten in the First World War, just as I mentioned. Iran, being the descendant of the Persian Empire, of course it has diminished in size to some extent, but it still holds this civilizational value to it. It is still multinational in some sense. For example, if you look at the regional map of Iran, you'll discover that it has an Azerbaijan inside it, which is even greater than the independent Azerbaijan. So Iran is, to a certain extent, a multinational entity, just like it has a Kurdistan. But okay, yeah, many countries have their own Kurdistans, so that's not something that important. But anyway, just like Iran is this descendant of the Persian Empire, and it has this civilizational nature to it. Given though given the fact that after the Arabs conquered Iran and imposed Islam on it instead of Zoroastrianism, which it had, the Arabs borrowed a lot of literature and science from the Persians. Basically, the Persian civilization overflowed into the Arabic one, and during the time of the Ottoman Empire, which was basically the successor state of the Caliphate, the Arab Caliphate, it was also the Persians, together with the Greeks, that the Persians influenced a lot of the Ottoman Turkish literary language, and the Persians, together with the Greeks, were kind of the intellectual class of the empire. So this is why, to some extent, Persia is still, or Iran, can still be regarded as its own civilization, given the fact that it has remained sovereign. This is why it is under sanctions and so on. So it has not bowed to the will of the United States, and even though it has lost some territories in the past 200 years, some territories even to the Russian Empire, just like this is why there is an independent Azerbaijan, as I mentioned. But it still sways a lot of influence in the area. There are several other peoples who speak Persian. For example, in Afghanistan, you have Pashto and Dari, which are two Persian dialects. You have Tajik in the former Russian Empire, and then in the former Soviet Union, the Tajiks are also Persian. So Iran has a lot of leeway once it manages to escape the stranglehold of the United States. It will probably extend its area of influence on the one side to the Persian language speaking areas, and on the other hand to Shia areas such as the southern half of Iraq and Syria, some parts of Syria. Anyway, it is to be expected that Iran will be the cultural hegemon of the Middle East, not just because I know it is an imperialistic country right now or something, but because many countries in the area look up to it just as a fountain of culture, because this is what it was throughout the centuries and throughout the millennia. And something similar happens to Russia. Russia is not only the successor state of the Kievan Rus, and together with this union state that it is constructing together with Belarus and probably in the future with Ukraine, it is presenting itself as the country of the Eastern Slavs, the national country of the Eastern Slavs. But apart from that, it is also the national country of the Chechens, Bashkirs, Ingush, many other peoples who have no other country except for Russia, and they have their own autonomous republic inside of Russia. So just like Vladimir Putin said recently in an interview, the Russian state knows no boundaries, in the sense that, given that it is a multinational country, it can adopt various other identities, it can adopt various other peoples and have them preserve their cultural identity as long as they are nationally Russian. So it is possible to be nationally Russian without being ethnically Russian. This was basically the point. And this was also valid for all sorts of other nationalities, such as the Germans. Before the Second World War, you had the Volga Germans, you had the Bessarabian Germans, many German groups inside the Russian Empire, and then subsequently inside the Soviet Union. You had the Jews. There is this autonomous Okrug close to Mongolia, to the Mongolian border, which was made especially for the Jews before Israel was set up. And yeah, basically this is also the reason for this new law that Russia has passed, the fact that it welcomes foreigners who are culturally compatible with the Russian way of life. So they are basically anti-woke. and they welcome them from a list of Western countries, and giving them permanent residence permits without them speaking Russian and knowing the Russian legal system and everything like this, in order to foster these communities, these diasporas of the West, which to showcase probably to to present to the world that it is possible to have a Russian nationality and to be Western in your ideas, to be to preserve your identity, your ethnic identity. This is why there is this difference between being an ethnic Russian, in Russian that would be Ruski, and culturally, or yeah, nationally Russian, which would be Rossiani. So they make this distinction. A Chechen is not a Ruski, but he's a Rossiani, because he's a member of the Russian nation in this broader sense. And something similar happens to China, in the sense that it is not only the country of the Sinic peoples, the Sino-Tibetan peoples, the Hans and the uh, Tibetans and the Cantonese speakers and so on, but it is also the country of the Uyghurs. Even though they are a Turkic nation, they are a Turkic people, they still are part of the Russian civilization. And Russia develops this area accordingly. It develops them, helps them preserve their culture, but at the same time teaches them Mandarin in order to integrate them into this, to offer them opportunities, to integrate them into what is now the workshop of the world. So yeah, this is what I wanted to talk to you about. I'll come back in another episode to talk about the lesser candidates to this civilizational status, which I mentioned earlier, Turkey and India, because my battery is running low. But see you soon. Bye.